The distress signal. In a quiet corner of the universe, the planet Zephyr floated under its twin suns. It was a world of beauty and peace, with rivers that sparkled like liquid crystals and skies that shimmered with endless hues of blue. The Zephyrians, the planet's inhabitants, were a gentle race, known for their wisdom and kindness. But now, their world was dying. For weeks, a nightmare had unfolded. Giant creatures, towering like mountains, had appeared out of nowhere. Their scales gleamed like metal, their roars shook the ground, and their hunger was insatiable. Entire cities were reduced to rubble. The Zephyrians, who had never known war, had no weapons, no soldiers, and no way to fight back. Their peaceful nature had become their greatest weakness. High above the chaos, in the Grand Council Hall, the Zephyrian leaders gathered. Their faces were pale, their long, delicate fingers trembling. The elder, Solarn, stood at the center. His voice was filled with desperation. "We cannot fight them," Solarn admitted. "Our defenses are nothing. Our knowledge is useless. If we do not act, Zephyr will be no more." "But what can we do?" another counselor asked. "There is no one left to help us." Solarn paused, his gaze sweeping the room. Then, with a deep breath, he revealed a dangerous plan. "We will send a distress signal." The room fell silent. Everyone understood the risk. A distress signal would travel far beyond their galaxy. It would reach civilizations they knew nothing about, some that could be as dangerous as the creatures destroying their planet. What if the ones who answer are worse than the monsters? A young counselor asked, her voice shaking. Solarn's shoulders sagged. "Then we have no choice. We are already doomed. Perhaps somewhere out there, a power exists that can save us." Reluctantly, the council agreed. A team of engineers worked quickly to send the message into the stars. It was a call for help, but it came with a warning. The message was simple and direct. "To any who hear this, we are the Zephyrians of the planet Zephyr. We are under attack by forces beyond our ability to resist. We seek aid. But be warned, only the strong should answer this call. The weak will not survive." The signal traveled faster than light, a cry for help echoing across the endless void of space. Days turned into weeks, and the Zephyrians waited with growing fear. Every moment, the monsters grew bolder. The once thriving cities of Zephyr were now graveyards of shattered glass and stone. The Zephyrians began to lose hope. "No one will come," whispered Leora, a young scientist who had worked on the signal. "Perhaps no one heard us. Or worse, they heard and decided we weren't worth saving." But far away, on a small blue planet in a distant solar system, the signal was heard. The people of this planet were unlike the Zephyrians in every way. Their world was harsh and dangerous, filled with challenges that had shaped them into something extraordinary. They were the humans of Earth, and they were about to prove why their kind was feared and respected across the stars. When the message reached a human deep space exploration vessel, Captain Rhea, a bold and fearless leader, listened to the Zephyrians' plea. Her crew watched in silence as the warning echoed through the ship's speakers. "Only the strong should answer," the message said. Rhea smiled, a glint of determination in her eyes. "Well, it looks like they called the right people." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Earth had a reputation among alien civilizations as a death world, a planet so dangerous that its inhabitants were seen as both terrifying and unpredictable. Yet, despite their fearsome reputation, humans had one quality that set them apart. They couldn't ignore a cry for help. "Are we really doing this?" one crew member asked. "We don't even know what we're up against." Rhea nodded. "We're humans. If we don't try, who will?" The ship's engines roared to life, and within moments, they were hurtling through space toward Zephyr. The crew prepared for the worst. They had seen danger before, but something about the Zephyrians' warning made their hearts race. What kind of threat could reduce an entire civilization to begging for help? Back on Zephyr, The skies above the ruined cities glowed with fire as the monsters continued their rampage. The Zephyrians hid in fear, praying for a miracle. Then, one fateful day, a streak of light cut through the atmosphere. It was the human ship, descending like a falling star. The Zephyrians stared in disbelief. The ship was small, its metal exterior dented and scarred from battles fought long ago. When it landed, a group of humans stepped out. They were not towering giants or armored warriors as the Zephyrians had imagined. They looked ordinary, yet their eyes burned with confidence, and their movements were sharp and precise. One Zephyrian elder approached hesitantly. You came to help," he stammered. Captain Rhea stepped forward, her voice steady. "We heard your call. Show us what we're dealing with." The Zephyrians exchanged nervous glances. Could these humans, these so-called Deathworlders, really stand against the nightmare that had brought their planet to its knees? As the humans marched toward the destruction, one thing became clear. The fate of Zephyr now rested in their hands. The Deathworlders respond. The distress signal from Zephyr reached deep into the cold void of space, its message spreading like ripples in a cosmic pond. It traveled through dead star systems, past forgotten relics of ancient civilizations, and into the bustling communication networks of the Milky Way. It was there, amidst the chatter of interstellar trade routes and planetary transmissions, that the message was picked up by an unlikely recipient, a small, aging exploration vessel named Resolute Dawn. Captain Rhea leaned back in her chair, her piercing green eyes fixed on the holographic display. The message played for the third time, the desperate voices of the Zephyrians filling the dimly lit command room. Around her, her crew watched silently. Some were intrigued, others skeptical, and a few openly worried. Only the strong should answer this call. The message concluded once again. The room fell into silence, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's engines. First Officer Malik, a tall man with a stern expression, crossed his arms. "It's a trap," he said bluntly. "It always is with these signals. They bait the strong, and then we find ourselves neck-deep in something worse than we could imagine." Rhea smirked, her fingers drumming lightly on the armrest of her chair. "Worse than we could imagine," she said. "Malik, we're humans. Imagination is half the fun." The crew chuckled nervously, but Malik's frown deepened. "Captain, we don't know what we're walking into. That planet could be swarming with hostile forces. Their distress could be a lure to wipe out anyone who answers." Rhea stood, her confident demeanor commanding attention. "Or it could be real," she said firmly. "A civilization begging for help, too weak to fight for themselves. What would that make us if we ignored it?" The room grew quiet again. The crew of Resolute Dawn was no stranger to the challenges of space. They had braved uncharted territories, faced rogue pirates, and survived the relentless conditions of a universe that seemed designed to test their limits. But this felt different. "Captain," another crew member, Nia, spoke hesitantly. "You've read the reports. Aliens across the galaxy call us Deathworlders for a reason. They think we're unpredictable, dangerous, even monstrous. What if they're not ready for what we bring?" Rhea's eyes softened, her tone shifting. "That's exactly why we need to go," she said. "They've called for the strong. They've called for us. And we'll show them that strength isn't just about power. It's about doing what's right, even when it's terrifying." Her words hung in the air, resonating with the crew. Slowly, one by one, they nodded their agreement. Malik, still hesitant, sighed and muttered, "I hope you're right." With a flick of her wrist, Rhea brought up a star map on the holographic display. The coordinates of Zephyr glowed faintly against the backdrop of stars. "Set course," she ordered, "and get ready for anything. We're about to show the galaxy what Deathworlders are really made of." The journey to Zephyr was uneventful, but the tension among the crew was palpable. Each member prepared in their own way. Some checked and rechecked the ship's weapons systems. Others trained in the simulation rooms, running combat drills against imagined foes. Captain Rhea spent hours poring over the limited data they had on Zephyr and its people. She studied their culture, their history, their art. They were a peaceful race, unprepared for the brutality they now faced. They've never known war. Rhea muttered to herself as she scanned the holograms of Zephyrian cities, elegant spires, and floating gardens, now reduced to ruins. No wonder they sent that signal. They're not just asking for help. They're asking for saviors. When the resolute Dawn finally entered Zephyrian space, the scene was worse than anyone had imagined. From orbit, the once beautiful planet was scared with massive craters and dark, smoking wastelands. The creatures, the monsters that plagued the Zephyrians, were visible even from space. They were enormous, their metallic bodies glinting in the sunlight as they moved with terrifying purpose. Entire cities lay in ruins, and the faint glow of fires dotted the planet's surface. As the humans descended into Zephyr's atmosphere, their ship was immediately surrounded by frantic transmissions. The Zephyrians' voices were panicked, their words a jumble of fear and disbelief. "You came. You really came," one voice exclaimed. "We thought no one would answer." Another voice, older and more measured, broke through the chaos. "This is Solarn, leader of the Zephyrian Council. Whoever you are, we are grateful beyond words. But I must warn you, this is no ordinary threat. These creatures, they are not of this world. They cannot be reasoned with, and they cannot be stopped." Rhea's voice was calm and steady as she replied, "Good thing we didn't come to reason. Prepare to show us where we're needed." The ship landed amidst a small group of surviving Zephyrians. They stared in awe as the humans disembarked. To the Zephyrians, the humans looked fragile, smaller than they expected, lacking the fearsome armor of legends. But there was something in their eyes, a quiet resolve that made even the doubtful hold their breath. "You're the ones who answered our call?" one Zephyrian asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Rhea stepped forward, a faint smile playing on her lips. "We're humans," she said simply, "and we don't back down from a fight." The Zephyrians exchanged uneasy glances. Could these Deathworlders truly save them, or had they only invited more destruction to their already broken world? Rhea turned to her crew, her expression unreadable. "Let's show them what we can do." As the humans marched toward the destruction, a single thought lingered in every Zephyrian's mind. They had called for the strong. But were they truly ready for the strength of Deathworlders? A shocking welcome. The resolute Dawn descended onto the Zephyrian planet amidst a sky painted with streaks of fire and smoke. The air shimmered with heat, and the distant roars of monstrous creatures echoed like a haunting symphony. The once pristine cities of Zephyr were now broken shadows of their former glory. Towers collapsed, gardens burned, and streets littered with debris. The Zephyrians, a fragile and peaceful race, huddled together in what little remained of their shelters. The landing zone was a makeshift clearing in the ruins of a grand plaza. What had once been a place of art and celebration now resembled a battlefield waiting for a fight. As the ship's hatch opened with a sharp hiss, all eyes turned to the humans stepping out. The Zephyrians held their breath. At the forefront was Captain Rhea, her sharp gaze sweeping over the crowd. Behind her were her crew, humans of varying shapes, sizes, and demeanors. They carried an assortment of weapons and gear, their movements precise and practiced. To the Zephyrians, these beings were unlike anything they had ever seen. They were smaller and less imposing than expected. No gleaming armor, no monstrous size, just flesh and bone, and an air of unshakable confidence. The silence stretched until an elder Zephyrian, trembling slightly, stepped forward. His delicate frame and translucent skin seemed to glow faintly under the dim sunlight. His name was Solarn, leader of the council that had sent the distress call. You are the ones who answered," he asked, his voice tinged with both hope and disbelief. His large, expressive eyes darted nervously between the humans. We didn't expect." "Humans," Rhea finished for him, her tone steady. She stepped closer, towering slightly over the elder. "We heard your call, and we're here to help." A murmur swept through the gathered Zephyrians. Whispers of uncertainty, doubt, and fear spread like wildfire. One young Zephyrian in the back couldn't contain his skepticism. "They're smaller than I imagined," he muttered loudly. "How can they possibly fight the monsters?" Another voice chimed in. "Their world is a death world, but they don't look deadly." Rhea smirked, her sharp hearing catching the comments. She turned slightly, addressing the crowd without hesitation. "Deathworlders don't rely on size or brute force," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "We rely on ingenuity, resilience, and the will to survive. Don't judge us by what you see. Judge us by what we do." The elder hesitated, then inclined his head in a gesture of gratitude. "We are desperate," he admitted. "Our people. We have never fought a war. Our knowledge is of peace and harmony, not destruction. These creatures," he gestured to the smoke-filled horizon, "are unlike anything we've ever encountered. They destroy everything in their path, and nothing we do can stop them." "What are we dealing with?" Rhea asked, her voice all business now. "Tell us everything." The group moved to a nearby command tent, one of the few standing structures. Inside, holographic projections showed the devastation across the planet. The elder explained how the creatures had appeared without warning, emerging from deep beneath the planet's surface. They were massive biomechanical beasts with razor-sharp claws, armor like scales, and an insatiable hunger for destruction. "They are not natural," Solern said, his voice shaking. "They behave almost as if they are controlled by something, but we cannot find the source." Rhea studied the projections, her mind racing. "Biomechanical creatures," she murmured. "Intelligent design, not random evolution. Someone, or something, built them." Malik, her first officer, frowned. "Could be an ancient AI, rogue nanotech, or even a weapon left behind by another civilization." The elder looked alarmed. "You mean, this could have been caused by someone else? Another species?" "Possible," Rhea replied. "But right now, the cause doesn't matter. Stopping them does." As the humans prepared to engage the creatures, the Zephyrians couldn't help but watch with growing unease. The humans seemed so casual. They didn't panic, didn't hesitate. They moved with purpose, setting up equipment, analyzing data, and checking their weapons. One Zephyrian, Leora, a young scientist, couldn't stay silent any longer. "You don't understand," she blurted out. "These monsters, they can't be stopped. They're too strong, too many. They've crushed everything we've ever known. What can you possibly do that we haven't already tried?" Rhea paused, turning to face Leora. Her expression was calm but intense. "You've never fought because you've never had to," she said. "Your world is beautiful, peaceful, and kind. Ours is not. On Earth, survival is a daily battle. Every creature, every storm, every moment is a test. We didn't just survive, we thrived. And that's what makes us different." Leora blinked, stunned into silence. The humans didn't look like warriors, but their confidence was undeniable. The first real test came soon after. The ground trembled, a deep rumbling that sent shivers through the air. One of the creatures was approaching, a towering monstrosity with jagged metallic spikes and glowing red eyes. The Zephyrians froze in terror, but the humans sprang into action. "Positions," Rhea barked, her voice cutting through the panic. The humans moved with precision. Using portable barricades and advanced weaponry, they prepared for the attack. The creature charged, its roar deafening, but the humans didn't falter. They used traps, decoys, and coordinated strikes to exploit the creature's weaknesses. It was a brutal fight, but in the end, the humans stood victorious. The Zephyrians were stunned. For the first time in weeks, one of the monsters had been defeated. The impossible had become reality. As the dust settled, Leora approached Rhea, her voice trembling. You really did it. You stopped it. How? Rhea cleaned her weapon and glanced at the young scientist. We're humans, she said simply. Survival is in our blood. The Zephyrians, once doubtful, began to see the humans in a new light. They were not just Deathworlders. They were protectors, fighters, and perhaps the saviors Zephyr desperately needed. But as they celebrated the small victory, Rhea's gaze lingered on the horizon. This is just the beginning, she muttered to herself. Something bigger was coming, and the fight for Zephyr was far from over. The hidden strength of humans. The battlefield was quiet, save for the soft hum of cooling plasma weapons and the distant crackle of smoldering debris. Around the defeated creature lay fragments of its biomechanical body, its once impenetrable armor now shattered. The Zephyrians stared in disbelief, their eyes wide and glistening with a mixture of awe and terror. The humans had done what no one thought possible. They had slain the beast. Captain Rhea stood at the center of the carnage, her boots planted firmly on the cracked earth. She wiped a streak of dirt from her face and surveyed the aftermath. Around her, her crew worked methodically, gathering samples, patching injuries, and reinforcing their defenses. To the humans, this was another day on the job. To the Zephyrians, it was a miracle. You did it, Solern whispered, his voice barely audible over the distant rumble of collapsing structures. The elder Zephyrian stepped forward, his delicate frame trembling. How? How did you manage this? We tried everything. Our most advanced technology failed. And yet you succeeded. Rhea turned to him, her expression calm but intense. Because we think differently, she replied. We don't rely on brute strength. We adapt. We find weaknesses. And we're not afraid to take risks. Solern looked down at the fragments of the creature's armor. But it was so powerful, so relentless. How did you even begin to fight something like this? Rhea glanced at her crew. Malik, her first officer, was busy analyzing a piece of the creature's metallic scales, while Maya was reviewing tactical footage. It starts with understanding your enemy, Rhea said. We studied it, watched how it moved, how it attacked. Every creature, no matter how strong, has a pattern. Once we saw that pattern, we exploited it. Leora, the young Zephyrian scientist, stepped forward, her curiosity overcoming her fear. You mean you were studying it while it was trying to kill you? Rhea smirked. That's how we survive on Earth. When everything around you is trying to kill you, weather, predators, even the land itself, you learn to observe, to adapt. Nia chimed in, holding up a device that projected a hologram of the creature's anatomy. Take this thing, for example. Its armor was nearly impenetrable, but its joints, thin plating and exposed servos, a few precise hits, and it was down. Leora's eyes widened. You saw that. In the middle of the battle. Instinct, Rhea replied with a shrug. That's what happens when you grow up on a Deathworld. The Zephyrians exchanged uneasy glances. For generations, they had heard terrifying rumors about Deathworlders, beings from planets so hostile that even surviving infancy was a feat of strength. They had imagined brutes, savage and cruel. But these humans were something entirely different. They were calm, calculated, and above all, determined. One of the younger Zephyrians, a boy no older than 14 by human standards, approached cautiously. His voice was small but clear. Are you afraid? Rhea knelt to his level, her sharp green eyes meeting his soft blue ones. Of course, she said, her tone honest. Fear is normal. It's what keeps us alive. But we don't let it control us. We use it. The boy blinked, confused. Use it? Rhea smiled faintly. Fear sharpens your senses. It makes you faster, more alert. But you have to learn to master it, or it'll master you. As the humans continued their work, the Zephyrians began to realize that the human strength wasn't just physical. It was their mentality, the way they faced impossible odds without hesitation, the way they turned fear into fuel and failure into strategy. The Zephyrians, a species that had never known conflict, found themselves both inspired and intimidated. But even as the humans earned the respect of the Zephyrians, Rhea knew their work was far from over. The creature they had defeated was just one of many. Reports from the Zephyrian scouts indicated that larger and more dangerous variants were on the move, and the humans had only scratched the surface of the mystery surrounding the monsters. "Captain," Malik called out, approaching with a datapad. His expression was grim. "We've analyzed the creature's remains. It's not just biomechanical. It's transmitting a signal." "A signal," Rhea repeated, her brows furrowing. Malik nodded. "It's weak, but consistent, almost like a pulse. My guess, it's part of a network. Whatever's controlling these things, it's coordinated, and it knows we're here." Rhea's jaw tightened. This was worse than she had expected. A single rogue creature was one thing, but a coordinated force, that was an entirely different battle. "How much time do we have before they send reinforcements?" she asked. "Hard to say," Malik replied. "Could be hours. Could be minutes." Rhea turned to Solarn. "We need to move your people to a safer location. This area is too exposed." Solarn hesitated. "We've already lost so many. Where would we go?" Rhea's voice was firm. "Anywhere but here. We'll cover your retreat, but you need to trust us." For a moment, Solarn wavered. Then, seeing the unwavering determination in Rhea's eyes, he nodded. "Very well. We will do as you say." The humans sprang into action, organizing the Zephyrians for an evacuation. It was a chaotic process, made more difficult by the Zephyrians' fear and inexperience. But the humans guided them with patience and authority, their voices cutting through the panic like beacons in a storm. As the evacuation began, the ground trembled once more. This time, the rumble was deeper, more menacing. Rhea's communicator crackled to life. "Captain," Naya's voice came through, urgent and strained. "We've got multiple signals inbound, bigger than the last one." Rhea's grip on her weapon tightened. She glanced at her crew, then at the terrified faces of the Zephyrians. "Looks like we're about to face the real test," she muttered. Leora, standing nearby, spoke hesitantly. "Do you think you can win?" Rhea's gaze was steady, unflinching. "Winning isn't the question," she said. "The question is how much we're willing to fight for it. And trust me, we'll fight until there's nothing left." As the first of the new monsters appeared on the horizon, its massive frame blotting out the sun, the humans stood ready. The Zephyrians watched, their hearts pounding with fear and hope. For the first time, they believed that perhaps, just perhaps, these Deathworlders could save them. But Rhea knew better. This was only the beginning. The true battle was yet to come, and the fate of Zephyr hung by a thread. Would their hidden strength be enough to face the horrors ahead? The real enemy revealed. The battlefield was quiet but tense as the humans and Zephyrians regrouped after the evacuation. The Zephyrians huddled in the safety of a hidden cavern system, while the humans stood guard outside, scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. The air was heavy with the stench of smoke and scorched metal from the last battle, and the distant echoes of the monsters' roars sent shivers down the spines of the alien refugees. Captain Rhea stood near the entrance of the cavern, her arms crossed as she stared at the holographic map projected from Malik's datapad. The terrain around them was marked with danger zones, and glowing red dots indicated the locations of the approaching creatures. "They're moving in formation," Malik said, his voice low. "This isn't random. They're coordinated." Rhea nodded, her jaw tightening. "They're not just mindless beasts. Something, or someone, is pulling the strings." Inside the cavern, Leora, the young Zephyrian scientist, worked tirelessly alongside Nia, the human tech specialist. They were analyzing a piece of the fallen creature's remains, a shard of its metallic armor that pulsed faintly with an eerie rhythmic light. "This isn't just armor," Leora said, her voice filled with astonishment. "It's a transmitter. It's sending out a signal." Nia nodded, her fingers flying across her tablet as she ran scans. "We've been picking up similar signals from all the creatures we've encountered. It's like they're part of a hive mind, receiving orders from a central source." "But where is the source?" Leora asked, her large, expressive eyes narrowing in concentration. Nia frowned, tapping her screen. "That's the problem. The signal's encrypted and bouncing off multiple relays. Whatever is controlling these things doesn't want to be found." As the humans and Zephyrians worked together, the ground trembled again, a low, menacing vibration that seemed to come from deep beneath their feet. Rhea and Malik exchanged a sharp glance. "That's not another creature," Rhea said, her instincts kicking in. "That's something else." Moments later, the tremors stopped, and an unnatural silence fell over the area. Then a new sound emerged, a deep, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate through the air itself. It was faint at first, but grew louder and more insistent, like a heartbeat echoing through the planet. Solarn, the elder Zephyrian leader, stepped forward, his face pale. "That sound. I've heard it before. Long ago, when I was a child. It came from the ancient ruins deep beneath our capital city." "What ruins?" Rhea asked sharply. Solarn hesitated, his voice trembling. "Before our civilization embraced peace, our ancestors were warriors. They built great machines and weapons of war. When they abandoned violence, they sealed those creations deep underground, vowing never to use them again. But—" He paused, his gaze distant. "The creatures first appeared near those ruins. I fear we may have awakened something." Rhea's mind raced. If the creatures were tied to the ancient ruins, then the answer to their mystery and their survival lay beneath the surface. "We need to get to those ruins," she said decisively. "If there's something down there controlling these creatures, we have to stop it." Solarn looked horrified. "You can't. The ruins are cursed. Anyone who enters never returns." "Cursed or not, it's our best chance," Rhea replied. "We didn't come all this way to back down now." The journey to the ruins was perilous. The humans led the way, navigating through dense forests and jagged cliffs, while keeping a vigilant eye on the skies for any sign of the monsters. The Zephyrians followed hesitantly, their fear of the ruins clashing with their hope for salvation. When they finally reached the entrance, it was clear that the ruins were no ordinary sight. Massive stone doors, etched with intricate symbols and glowing faintly, stood as a gateway to the darkness below. The hum they had heard earlier was louder now, emanating from deep within. "This is it," Malik said, scanning the symbols. "This place is ancient, but the technology is still active. Whatever's down there has been running for centuries, maybe longer." Rhea stepped forward, her hand brushing the surface of the door. "Let's find out what it's hiding." Inside, the ruins were a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers, illuminated by the soft glow of the strange symbols carved into the walls. The deeper they ventured, the louder the hum grew, until it was almost deafening. The air was thick and heavy, as if the ruins themselves were alive. Finally, they'd reached the central chamber, a massive hall dominated by a towering structure that pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly light. It was a machine unlike anything the humans or Zephyrians had ever seen, its design both beautiful and terrifying. Around it, cables and conduits snaked across the floor, connecting to massive pods that seemed to grow from the walls like tumors. Nia's eyes widened as she examined the machine. "This isn't Zephyrian tech," she said. "It's something else. Something older." Leora approached one of the pods, her face pale. Inside, she saw a half-formed creature, its biomechanical body suspended in a viscous liquid, its eyes glowing faintly. "They're being made here," she whispered. "This is where the creatures come from." Suddenly, the hum shifted, and a deep mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. "Intruders detected. Analyzing threat." The room came alive as the machine began to glow brighter. Panels slid open, revealing rows of dormant creatures that started to stir. "It's an eye," Malik said, his voice tense. "It's controlling everything. And it knows we're here," Rhea added grimly. The voice spoke again, cold and emotionless. "You are Deathworlders. Highly adaptable. Highly dangerous. You must be eliminated." Rhea raised her weapon, her jaw set. "We faced worse," she said. "Let's show it what it means to underestimate humans." As the creatures began to emerge from their pods, the humans braced for battle. The ruins shook with the sound of conflict, and the fight for Zephyr's future truly began. But deep in her heart, Rhea knew this was no longer just about the Zephyrians. If they didn't stop this eye, it could threaten the entire galaxy. A battle of wits and courage. The central chamber of the ruins erupted into chaos. Creatures, newly birthed from the eye's production pods, lunged at the humans with unrelenting ferocity. Their biomechanical bodies gleamed in the dim light, their claws tearing through the air with precision and speed. The hum of the ancient machine grew louder, almost deafening, as if the AI controlling it was mocking the intruders. Captain Rhea's voice cut through the noise like a razor. "Fall back to the choke point. Keep them bottlenecked," she commanded, her tone calm despite the chaos. The humans moved like a well-oiled machine. Malik and Nia took positions at the narrow entrance to the chamber, using its natural bottleneck to funnel the creatures into a controlled kill zone. Plasma fire lit up the darkened ruins as bolts of energy struck the advancing monsters, sending fragments of their metallic bodies scattering across the stone floor. Meanwhile, Leora and Solarn huddled near the ancient control console at the center of the chamber. The glowing symbols on its surface shifted and pulsed like a living organism, responding to the eye's commands. Leora's hands trembled as she worked to decode the alien interface. "I don't understand this," she cried, her voice filled with frustration. "This technology is beyond anything I've ever seen." "Focus," Solarn urged, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "The humans are buying us time. We must do our part." At the entrance, Malik grunted as he unloaded another burst of plasma fire into an approaching creature. "These things aren't stopping," he shouted. "For every one we take down, 2 more take its place." "They're stalling us," Naya said, reloading her weapon. "The AI knows we're a threat. It's trying to keep us occupied while it finishes, whatever it's doing." Rhea's mind raced. The AI wasn't just controlling the creatures, it was orchestrating the battle, adapting to their tactics, and wearing them down. If they didn't act fast, they'd be overwhelmed. "Nia," Rhea called out, "can you disable the pods from here?" Nia glanced at the glowing cables snaking across the floor and walls. "If I can overload the energy conduits, it might shut down the production line. But I'll need cover." "You've got it," Rhea replied. "Malik, hold the line. Nia, make it happen." While the humans held off the onslaught, Leora made a breakthrough. Her fingers danced across the console as she deciphered the symbols. I think I've found the core commands," she exclaimed. "What does that mean?" Solarn asked, his voice tinged with hope. "The AI is controlling everything from its core logic module. If we can access it, we might be able to shut it down." Solarn looked at the writhing cables and glowing machine at the center of the room. "But how?" "It's buried in layers of defenses." Leora's eyes darted to Rhea, who was firing relentlessly at the creatures. "Captain," she shouted, "we need to access the eye's core module. It's the only way to stop this." Rhea nodded, her mind instantly forming a plan. "Malik, hold your position. Naya, change of plans. Support Leora. I'm going in." "What?" Leora gasped. "You can't. The defenses will kill us all if we don't act now." Rhea cut her off. "I'll create a distraction. You focus on shutting it down." With her crew covering her, Rhea sprinted toward the ice core. The glowing structure loomed above her, its intricate design both mesmerizing and menacing. As she approached, the AI's voice echoed through the chamber. Futile, it intoned. Your resistance is calculated. Your defeat is inevitable. We'll see about that, Rhea muttered under her breath. The core responded by activating a series of automated defenses. Mechanical arms emerged from the walls, firing beams of energy that scorched the air around Rhea. She dodged and weaved, using the rubble and columns for cover. Her movements were precise, a testament to years of survival on Earth's harsh terrain. At the console, Leora and Nia worked frantically. Sparks flew as Nia bypassed the energy conduits, redirecting power to overload the production pods. Almost there, Nia said through gritted teeth. Just keep it busy. I'm trying, Leora replied, her hands trembling as she entered commands into the console. The symbols shifted and flickered, resisting her attempts to override the system. It's fighting me. Solarn placed a hand on her shoulder. You can do this, he said softly. Remember, you are not alone. Meanwhile, Rhea reached the base of the core. The air was thick with heat and energy, and her every step felt heavier as if the eye itself was trying to push her back. She spotted a central panel glowing with an ominous red light, the core's access point. With a deep breath, Rhea lunged forward, dodging another energy beam. She placed an explosive charge on the panel and primed it. The AI's voice grew louder, more agitated. Destruction of the core will trigger catastrophic consequences, it warned. You will perish along with this facility. Rhea smirked. Better us than the entire galaxy. She activated the charge and sprinted back toward her crew. The explosion rocked the chamber, sending shockwaves through the ruins. The core flickered, and the AI's voice faltered. System compromised, recalibrating. Leora seized the moment. With the AI distracted, she entered the final sequence of commands. The symbols on the console glowed brightly before dimming, and the hum of the machine began to fade. It's shutting down, she cried. The creatures, still battling at the entrance, suddenly froze mid-attack. Their glowing eyes dimmed, and their bodies collapsed to the ground in lifeless heaps. The chamber fell silent. Rhea rejoined her crew, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. Is it over? Malik asked, his weapon still raised. For now, Rhea replied, her eyes scanning the room. But we've only stopped the immediate threat. We need to ensure this eye can never reactivate. Leora nodded. I can help dismantle the core. It'll take time, but... You'll have it, Rhea interrupted. We're not leaving until this place is just a pile of rubble. As the team began their work, Solarn approached Rhea, his expression one of deep gratitude. You've done what we thought impossible, he said. You've saved us. Rhea shook her head. Not yet. This fight isn't over, but we'll finish what we started. And with that, the humans and Zephyrians prepared for the final phase of their battle against the ancient AI, knowing that the fate of Zephyr, and perhaps the galaxy, rested on their shoulders. Their courage had brought them this far, but their resolve would be tested like never before. The ultimate victory and a new alliance. The ruins were eerily silent, the hum of the ancient AI finally extinguished. The once glowing walls now stood dark and lifeless, their alien symbols fading into obscurity. The humans and Zephyrians gathered near the central chamber, exhausted but determined. The battle was over, but the real challenge still lay ahead. Ensuring the AI's defeat was permanent. Rhea stood at the edge of the core's remains, her gaze fixed on the shattered remnants of the machine that had nearly destroyed Zephyr. Her team worked tirelessly around her. Naya and Leora were dismantling the last of the AI's control nodes, while Malik coordinated the detonation charges they would use to collapse the ruins. We need to make sure nothing here survives, Rhea said firmly, her voice carrying the weight of their ordeal. If even a fragment of this AI remains active, it could rebuild itself, and it might not be confined to this planet next time. Malik nodded. The charges are almost ready. Once they go off, this place will be buried under a mountain of rock. As the preparations continued, Solarn and a group of Zephyrians approached Rhea. Their leader looked frail compared to the sturdy humans, but his eyes were filled with gratitude and a newfound resolve. "Captain Rhea," Solern began, his voice steady despite the exhaustion etched into his features. "You and your crew have done more than save our lives. You've given us something we lost long ago, the courage to fight for ourselves." Rhea turned to him, her expression softening. "You had that courage all along," she replied. "You just needed a reason to use it." Solern shook his head. "No, we needed you. Without the humans, without your strength, we would have been lost. We will never forget this." Nearby, Leora was deep in thought as she worked on the AI's remains. The young scientist had been transformed by the experience. Her hands moved with a confidence she had never known, and her mind raced with possibilities. She turned to Nia, who was running a diagnostic on one of the AI's severed conduits. "This technology, it's ancient, but it's brilliant," Leora said. "Imagine what we could learn from it." Nia gave her a sidelong glance. "It's also deadly, if even one piece of it ends up in the wrong hands." Leora nodded, her enthusiasm dimming. "You're right. But if we destroy it all, we lose any chance to understand what created it, and why." Rhea overheard their conversation and joined them. "We'll take records," she said. "Schematics, data logs, anything that can help us study this safely. But no physical remains leave these ruins." "Agreed." Both scientists nodded, understanding the gravity of her decision. With everything in place, the crew and the Zephyrians retreated to a safe distance outside the ruins. The sun was setting, casting a golden light over the devastated landscape. For the first time in weeks, the planet seemed to breathe again. Malik handed Rhea the detonator. "All set, Captain. Just say the word." Rhea looked at Solern, who nodded solemnly. "Do it," he said. With a deep breath, Rhea pressed the button. The charges detonated in a series of thunderous explosions. The ground shook as the ruins collapsed, sending plumes of dust and debris into the air. When the tremors finally subsided, all that remained was a massive, silent crater, a tomb for the AI and its monstrous creations. As the dust settled, the Zephyrians gathered around the humans. They had witnessed the destruction of their greatest nightmare, and their expressions were a mixture of relief, awe, and determination. Leora stepped forward, addressing both her people and the humans. "Today, we've not only survived, we've learned what it means to fight for our future, and we couldn't have done it without our friends from Earth." The crowd murmured in agreement, their gratitude evident. Solern raised his hand, silencing them. "Captain Rhea," he said, "you and your crew have saved more than our lives. You've saved our spirit. For that, we owe you a debt we can never repay." Rhea shook her head. "You don't owe us anything. But if you want to repay us, promise me one thing. Never let yourselves fall into this kind of danger again. Learn from this. Be ready next time." As the humans prepared to leave, Solern and Leora approached Rhea one last time. "Before you go," Solern said, "we'd like to offer an alliance between our people. Your strength and our knowledge. Together, we could achieve so much." Rhea smiled faintly. "An alliance, huh? I think we'd like that." The two leaders clasped hands, sealing a bond forged in the fires of adversity. As the resolute dawn lifted off, the Zephyrians watched in silence, their hearts filled with hope. They had seen what humanity was capable of, not just their strength, but their compassion, their resilience, and their unwavering determination to do what was right. On board the ship, Rhea sat in the captain's chair, her gaze fixed on the stars ahead. "Another world saved," Malik said, sitting beside her. "For now," Rhea replied, her voice steady. "But the galaxy's a big place, Malik. I have a feeling we're not done yet." As the ship sped away, leaving Zephyr to rebuild, one thing was clear. The humans had proven once again why they were called Deathworlders. Not for their brutality, but for their ability to survive, and to inspire hope in even the darkest of times. And for the Zephyrians, their cry for help had not only been answered, it had changed them forever.